DPW Southwest Family. I am here in the Sugar Land Heritage Museum. If you are headed to the office for our team meeting, you're going the wrong way. We're here at the Sugar Land Heritage Museum that's right next to the Children's Museum here by the big Imperial Building. Should know where that is because you're selling real estate in Sugar Land and the Southwest area. Look for the flyer. If you don't know, it's on our closed Facebook group for the actual address. We're about to get started. There's going to be a lot of information, historical background of Sugar Land. Look, how are you selling a product that you don't know anything about? This is why we're here. Many people don't know about this hidden gem. So come see us. We're starting on time. We'll have our food just like normal, and we're here from 11 to 12 o'clock. See y'all soon. He's going to be standing the majority of the time. This is good. So you also see me? That works. Will introduce yourself too. Okay, good morning. We're rolling, right?
Rolling.
All right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Kelly Southwest Family. Oh, I got you. I love it. Welcome to the Sugar Land Heritage Museum that is housed and produced by the Sugar Land Heritage Foundation. My name is Barta. Obviously, I hope all of y'all know who I am, but if you don't, I'm one of the assistant team leaders here at our, well, not here, but at our Keller Williams Southwest family. And I wanted to do something a little different, and we need every bit of the time. So my introduction will be very, very short, and our announcements are going to be very, very short. But one of the reasons I wanted you to understand your history is because as real estate agents, we are change agents, and we're helping people and we're selling a lifestyle. That is the product or the service that you are selling. So how better to sell that without knowing like the history. So I wanted you guys to come here. How many of you, with a show of hands, including those of you online, knew this place existed? Great. How many of you have actually been here? Right. So like for you guys that didn't see that, it was one hand, okay? So this is an important staple of our Fort Bend area. And so I wanted you to learn it, and it's part one of a series of you learning what you're selling, okay? We're gonna also go into the Missouri City area. We're also gonna go into the Richmond-Rosenberg area as well, based on their availability. So thank you guys for always going with my crazy ways. I know this is not traditional, so I appreciate your patience. And so in terms of announcements, this is very, very, very important. Our office is closed on Saturday, okay? And Sunday, so for the whole weekend. And I don't mean just closed because you just can't get in, like it's closed because there's no AC, there's no, like it's closed. So you won't be able to have access for that for this entire weekend. So make your plans accordingly, okay? So that's the most important announcement I needed to get to you guys. Other than that, I have with me a gracious fellow. He's our docent for today. His name is Hal J, well known in our community. So if you don't know him, you need to get to know him. Definitely very influential inside of our community. And he's doing us a favor because I know when you were coming in, what did it say on the doors? It's closed. So this museum is closed during this summer season. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So he opened it up for us too. Typically, other things should have been happening, right? So this is a huge favor. So let's give him the due respect and consideration for taking time out of his schedule, opening up the building for us so that we can learn a little bit more and put the tool in our tool belt to go help sell real estate. All right, y'all good?
I have somewhat of an internal conflict. My favorite Sugar Land is the one that had about 3,000 people in it when I moved here 40 years ago. And here I am talking to a bunch of realtors, telling them why I think Sugar Land is the sweetest place in the world and the best place in the world to raise a family. Been here 40 years, raised both my daughters here, and haven't had one single regret. What I want to do is, a lot of people, when we do our heritage hikes and whatever, they don't really understand what the history of this place is and the impact it had on the state of Texas. So that's what I want to go through. I want to go through about 500 years, very quickly. It won't take quite that long. Back in the 1500s, this area was uninhabited except by Native Americans, primarily the Karankawa Indians that roamed up and down the barrier islands from South Padre Island around the Corpus area up to Galveston. And there are two things about the Karankas. One is they were known to be cannibalistic. And second is that they were known to run around naked. Now that's a scary thought. They'll wake you up at night thinking about a naked cannibal running around the countryside, but that's who they were. They had a very big impact on this area. The Spanish government came in and they went into a process of genocide, which was carried further down the road by Stephen F. Austin, father of Texas, to totally eliminate the Karankas as a nation, as a people, or as a race. And they were very, very successful in it over the years. About 1822 or 1821, a fellow named Moses Austin entered into an agreement with the Spanish government to bring Anglo colonists to Tejas. Sadly, he passed away, and about the same time, Mexico won its independence from Spain. His son, Stephen F. Austin, the father of Texas, decided that he wanted to complete his father's mission of being an impresario and bringing Anglo colonists to the area. Prior to that time, it was all the Spanish missions were primarily dedicated to Christianizing the Indians. Weren't very successful, and there are a lot of those missions that are still around, primarily in San Antonio, which are great to go see. I also want to step back and in full disclosure, I will make no excuses for my unabridged pride in being a sixth-generation Texan and my pride in the city that I've lived in for the last 40 years. And, so you just got to grin and bear it if I make some comments where I'm bragging about all that kind of stuff. Stephen F. Austin, if you've seen, I'm sure you've all seen the statue over Town Center, the guy in buckskin, rearing horse, musket helmet in the air. I talked to Bob Pack, the sculptor who did that, and he said, well, he was really kind of a dapper guy. He said, so I took a little artistic license, and I thought he would look better in buckskin on a rearing horse with a musket in the air than a three-piece suit walking down the street with a briefcase in the air. He said that's really who he was, but he was totally committed to his father's mission. And he was going to bring what's referred to as the old 300. And again, I'm proud to say I had an ancestor in that group, to Tejas. And he went to the Deep South, which was in very, very, very bad straits economically. And a lot of people were looking to get a new lease on life. There are stories of riding down a road in Georgia and seeing on the whitewashed across the door of a log cabin, GTT, gone to Texas. That's the people he brought. There are two wrong turns I'm going to talk about. The first wrong turn was when Stephen F. Austin was bringing the colonists down the coast. He had planned to turn right at the Colorado, which is farthest down from here. He turned too soon. He turned on the Brazos, and he came up the Brazos River, and they got to about where the bridge is, and they decided this is the place we want to stop. There was very little land to clear, but there was also enough woods on the area to build homes and stuff like that. Which brings me to my first question. This is kind of a gimme. What do they call this big community right out here? It's been here for about 40 years. First colony. That's because this place is the first colony in the state of Texas. This is where Stephen F. Austin came. The land that you're sitting in right now was owned by Stephen F. Austin. That's just pretty cool. If you live in the Hill area, right over here, where some of the oldest company homes are, you get your tax bill, it refers to the Samuel May Williams League. And I would mention that, I'll get to tell you why I'm telling you that now. But it's land that SFA owned. It was his private land. These people came and they were given the option to buy about 4,500 acres. They could use some of it for grazing, some of it for farming. They all brought sugarcane, cut pieces for their personal use, which is how it basically got introduced into this area. They could buy the land for about 12 cents an acre. They could pay it off over 5 or 6 years. They could swap stuff, any kind of barter, any way they want to get the land. They had two caveats. First, they had to bring a letter from back home. I would have to have a letter in my pocket that said, Hal Jay's a good guy. Now, I may have my wife write that. Well, she wouldn't write that. I may have my neighbor write that. The other caveat was they had to convert to Catholicism. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you that all 300 families with a pure heart
converted to Catholicism. Some of them most likely did it because it was a good way to get some cheap land in the New World, basically. But they settled here. Austin had 5 contiguous grants, and they ran from the Brazos River down to Eldridge Road, and they side by side. They were about 2 miles wide and about 5 miles long. This was one of them, where we're standing right now. He brought these people in. He didn't stay that long. He moved to San Felipe, which is just this side of Sealy, where he did all the legal work. And he was taking care of all that business and everything. And at that time, what the colonists would do, they would take the cane and they would put it end to end in the bottom of the furrow, and it would sprout and grow like grass, which is basically what it is. But it would grow, and that's how they still do it. You go to Louisiana, where they have just hundreds and hundreds of square miles of sugar cane. That's how they plant the cane. The same method. What they did as far when they tried to turn it into sugar, well, this is a pretty, I'll say the word seasoned. This is a pretty seasoned group. You probably know what a ringer washer was. Everybody know what a ringer washer was? You know, the 2 ringers, you crank it, squeeze all the water out of the clothes. They had a deal set up like that with the ringer washer standing up in the middle of about a 30-foot vat with the mule on the outside connected to a rod to the ringer. He would walk around and squeeze all the juice out. Then they would take that and they put it in some trays, let it evaporate, let the water drip out of it, and they would scrape off all the scum. And then pretty soon they had a really, really ugly farm of brown sugar, but edible. But that's how they did it back then. So Stephen F. Austin moves to San Felipe. He's doing all the work. Still got these five leagues, and he's pretty much getting inundated by the work. So he says, I need some help. So that brings us to the second era of Sugarland. He heard about a man named Samuel May Williams, Williams Trace, Williams Way. This is another thing. A lot of people, they start to realize where some of these names in this area came from. They know who Kemper was and who Austin was, and Clements. But he needed help, and he'd heard about this guy named Samuel May Williams. Williams was from New Orleans. He got married, ran up a whole bunch of debt, took his wife's name to avoid the creditors, went to South America, became fluent in both written and spoken Spanish, and then came back. After that, he ended up paying off all of his debt, took his name back. So he ended up being a good guy. But word got to Austin that Samuel May Williams wanted a legal land, a parcel of land. He said, well, the man's done everything that I've ever asked of him, so I'm going to give him one of mine. That's where you sit. Like I said, your tax bill, if you live in the Hill, references the Samuel May Williams League, which ties you right back to the father of Texas. That's just extra cool. It's just extra cool. So he started doing all the work. He never lived here, though. He moved to Galveston, and his house is still in Galveston. It's a beautiful widowed frame house. It's got a widow's walk around the roof. And the stories are that Williams would go up on the roof and see what ships were coming in through some kind of signal system. He'd find out what they were carrying, and he'd go downtown and corner the market on that commodity. Not the most honest thing to do, but he was a tremendous businessman. He started the first Bank of Texas. If you ever saw that hokey movie called Rise in Texas about 10 years ago, about the Texas Revolution, a bunch of Texas Rangers who Austin founded to protect the colonists were sitting around a campfire, and one of them said, when this war is over, we need to go rob that bank in Galveston. Well, they were talking about robbing Samuel May Williams, basically. That was the bank, but that was the only bank there. He was a tremendous businessman. He started buying up some of the parcels from some of the other colonists, and he started creating what's called Oakland Plantation. And everything's running smooth. Everything's running smooth. Then along comes the Texas Revolution. And a little side story on that. My wife and I were at the Plains of Abraham in Quebec City one day on a hop on, hop off, and this guy says, the Plains of Abraham, that's the site of the shortest battle for independence in history. 21 minutes. Before he got the word minutes out, I felt my wife's elbow on my rib, but she knows I can't shut up. And I said, I beg to differ with you. The Battle of San Jacinto was 19 minutes, and we were a nation, an independent nation, a republic. He said he was going to change the story. I probably didn't, but we won the independence, and in the process of doing that, right after the fall of the Alamo and the massacre at Goliad, Santa Anna's heading this direction. And if you've taken Texas history, you've read about the runaway scrape, which is where all the women, children, and elderly got in their buckboards and were headed, they were boogieing out towards Louisiana to get away from Santa Ana, but they knew he was coming after them. He made the statement, Santa Ana made the statement that he was going to lay Oakland Plantation, which was the Williams Plantation, to waste. Second wrong turn. He ended up turning right about where Dulles is. Dulles High School is located at a place that used to be called Stafford Point, which was another sugar mill. And he laid it to waste. When he left, there wasn't a stick standing, thinking that he destroyed where we're sitting right now. So that was a second wrong turn. And then he goes on to San Jacinto and doesn't work out for him very well. So the Williams brothers, Samuel May Williams is in Galveston. His brothers Nathaniel and Matthew were living here, running the mill, running the operation. If you go into Constellation, you see the crown. It has 1843. That's when the first sugar mill was built on this property. It was not a refinery. It was still brown sugar, but they took it from the old days of running a narrow gauge railroad. We've got some wheels and rail back here out to the field, burning it, get the leaves off, cutting it, bringing it in, and doing what I said they did at the very beginning, to an actual mill where they could really process the sugar cane very quickly. They're only doing 3 months a year though. So the brothers, excuse me, let me step back. In 1849, that's when two guys from Brazoria, Benjamin Franklin Terry and William Jefferson Kyle, decided they were going to go to California and Gold Rush. And they were probably two of the very few that made any money other than the merchants at the Gold Rush, because they came back loaded. And they decided they wanted to get into the sugar industry, which gets us into the next era. Terry is the first person that we think ever used the word Sugarland. That's 2 words. I'll explain that in a minute too. When he was talking to somebody, and he basically said, all of this is my Sugarland. That's the first time it was used. Those 2 guys were also pretty astute business people. They heard that the railroad was going to build a line on a rail line on the straight line from the rebuilt Stafford Point to Richmond Rosenberg. Well, they went to the railroad and said, we'll give you 2,500 acres for a right of way if you'll make that line, that rail come to our mill. And if you look at it from 30,000 feet, instead of going like this, it goes like this. And that's the same right of way that you see out front. They figured it was a whole lot cheaper to bring the railroad to us for our product than us to take our product to the railroad and ship it. So they were pretty astute guys. Then about that time, maybe 15 years ago, 15 years later, we come upon the Civil War. Kyle stays here and runs the mill. Terry forms an organization called Terry's Texas Rangers. Terry High School, their mascot is the Rangers. And he goes to war. Ironically, he's killed in his first battle. Even more ironically, it was in the town he was born in, Bowling Green, Kentucky. He was buried there initially, then they brought him back here, and then I think now he's in the state cemetery in Austin, which is a really cool place to go if you ever have a chance. It's the who's who of Texas history, including Chris Kyle, the American sniper, that has been interred there. So then all of the descendants of those 2 guys, like most trust fund babies, just give me my money. I want out of this deal. I don't want to carry it on. So following the Civil War, 2 Confederate colonels, a Colonel Cunningham and a Colonel Ellis, come, they live in San Antonio, and these guys, they take filthy rich to an art form. They have lots and lots of money, and they want to become the sugar kings of the area. And understand at that time, as far as you could see was sugar cane. My wife and I stopped at Avery Island one time where Tabasco's made, and we came out the gate, out off the little bridge on the 90 and turned right. And without even rehearsing it, we both said that this has got to be what Sugarland looked like in the 1800s. I mean, as far as you could see with sugar cane, it was really neat, a neat sight. So these two guys want to come in. They got a lot of money. They start buying up the Terry and Kyle properties. And they'll build buildings, the mill and everything. And in I think it was 1887, they built the first sugar refinery. And I'll show you we've got some pictures I can point out to you, which basically the end product was the Snow White sugar that we see now, that we use now. They also determined it on a sidelight is that because they had some tenant farmers, if you plant asparagus on the top of the furrow, it was a green asparagus. If you planted it on the bottom of the furrow, it was white asparagus, which was a delicacy back east. So they figured out ways to even enhance what they were, what their tenant farmers were doing. Now we'll get into an area that I don't really like to talk about, but this is something I don't know if any of y'all have ever been asked about it or whatever. It's the Sugarland 95. Okay. Here's my complaint. Are there any journalism majors in here? Okay. Here's my complaint. These two guys brought convict leasing to Fort Bend County. And there is no question that it was pure and simply a form of slavery. That's not even debatable. But what the journalists are saying, they seem to want to, without doing any due diligence, they want to tie it to Sugarland. They say the Imperial Cemetery. Well, Imperial Sugar was named after somebody's favorite hotel. It had nothing to do with the cemetery. So I just wanted them to get the facts right. It was 10 or 12 years, 15 years before the dynamic duo that I'm going to talk about came along and made us what we are.
So we have a lot of new people here. In terms of new to people. They don't know about this.
Okay, Sugarland 95, I guess it's about 5 or 6 years ago when they were moving the dirt over here for the Reese Technical Center for Fort Bend ISD. They unearthed a cemetery, and there were 95 primarily African-American graves there. And like I said, why they were there is not debatable. Why they were in prison. So it's an ugly period of time. But if somebody had read the paper before they come talk to you about buying a house, explain to them that has nothing to do with the history of Sugarland. That was before Sugarland was even, well, it's after Terry called it Sugarland, but it was before Sugarland became Sugarland. And it's an ugly story, and they need to understand it's not a reflection on this city at all. They reinterred them at the school, at the technical school, and there's a very nice graveyard there with it's cardinalized. It's nice. It's nice. They did a very good job. That's the black eye. The pre-Sugarland black eye, I might add. It has nothing to do with Sugarland. So these guys are starting to modify stuff. They built a new mill, a new refinery, and then they have some ships coming in that are bringing in a whole lot of new equipment. In today's day, money, millions and millions of dollars worth of equipment. They lost the ships in a hurricane. These guys went into debt. At that time, this area was referred to as a hellhole of Brazos. And I've got a picture of one of the shanties that was here at that time. Kentland Street right out here that y'all came in on, that was nothing but bars and bordellos. There were no families at all. They were processing sugar 3 months a year in the winter. Every employee was either a recently paroled convicted felon, a sailor to wait for his next ship to go out, or vagabonds that were just traveling over the countryside. They would work for 3 months and then take off on something else. Not a good place to live. We've got a story of a guy that had a bar on Kentner Street right out front. He noticed shrinkage in his whiskey. So he crawled under the floor and he saw that somebody, it was a wooden floor, somebody had previously gone under there, drilled a hole through the floor up into the whiskey barrels and was siphoning off his booze. So he took everything out of the saloon, replaced the floor with whatever their form of concrete was back then, put everything back in, and the shrinkage problem went away. Let me tell you one other real quick story about about Texas. We were in DC on hop on, hop off. And every time we passed the Washington Monument, the guy said, that is the tallest freestanding memorial in the world. And you know what happened? I felt the elbow on my rib. And I told the guy, I said, first of all, it's 12 feet taller, that's 12 feet shorter than the San Jacinto Monument. Now, I think they put the star on the San Jacinto Monument just so that would happen. We're the only state in the country that can fly our flag at the same level of the US flag. And we can, by the annexation agreement, we can break into 5 states. We can't, I'm not talking about secession. I'm saying we can turn into 5 states according to that agreement. Only state in the country that can do that. And lastly, our Capitol Rotunda is taller than the US Rotunda. And yeah, it is. So I had to throw that back in, but anyway, I missed that out earlier. But it's a lot to be proud of. Those types of things. If you're a Texan, I've always said rather that there are 2 types of people. There are those with the good fortune to be born Texan, and those with the good sense to want to become a Texan. Just 2 kinds of people. My wife is the second. She's Ohio. But anyway, so these guys, they're losing a lot of money. They lost all those ships with all that equipment. All of their stuff goes into receivership about the turn of the century. On the board of the bank that was handling the receivership were 2 guys, the dynamic duo, I.H. Kempner and W.T. Eldridge. My wife and I have been married, if I get this wrong, don't tell her, 54 years. These are the only 2 people that I've ever heard of that were more polar opposite than my wife. I mean, they were like salt and pepper, vinegar and water. They were totally different. Eldridge came from New York. His father died. His mother remarried. Eldridge left home at 12. He did not have one single day of formal education in his life. He started, picking cotton, running a cartage business, everything he could do to earn money. At one time, he was a sheriff of Eagle Lake, down about 30 miles down the road. Twice, he was tried and twice found innocent by reason of self-defense of murder. He killed one of his partners, and he killed his partner's son when the son came for retribution. Not a really nice guy. But he was on this board. He amassed some money. The other guy is I.H. Kempner. And I don't think that I'm hard pressed to come up with anybody I've ever known or family I've ever known that was as pure as the Kempner family. These were just good people. In Galveston, they were in cotton merchandising, banking, and things like that. Very, 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 very well. He's on the board. The board wants to do something with the property, and I can't remember exactly what it was at this point, but these 2 guys, Eldridge and Kempner, decided they want nothing to do with that. So they left the board. Very short time period later, Eldridge goes to Kempner and says, we need to buy that property and turn it into something. Kempner went to his mom, and he told her that he was going to go into business with W.T. Eldridge. She knew who he was, and she knew what his reputation was. She even wrote in the book that she dreamt that he came into their house and killed everybody. She was deathly afraid of this guy. All she did was she looked Ike in the face and said, if you're going to do this, you better do it right. And that's what I'm telling you right now. From that day forward, it has been done right. And I'll go into more details in a minute. There's no question that it has been done right. So they break off, and we have 2 pictures. Let me just point at them real quick. When we used to have the museum in the engineering building, we'd have kids come in on a Saturday. And one day I was at HEB, and they had some sugar cane. So I got a couple stalks of it, took it to my workshop, cut it into 3-inch lengths, and then split it, quartered it, vacuum packed it. And after asking permission of the parents, I gave them a packet. I said, take this home and start on this, chew on this sugar cane. Because when I was growing up, we went to summer camp, we shoot on sugar cane and smoke grapevine. That's all we did. And it gave them a chance at it. Then I would take them to something like this. And I tell them, look at these two guys right here. Close your eyes and tell me which one of those two guys you want for a granddad. They open their eyes. Eldridge looks like a grumpy old man. Nobody pointed at him. Kipner, although I think he looked kind of like a mafioso in that picture, everybody pointed at him. He just looks like a grandfatherly kind. Whereas Eldridge, yeah, that's a scary thought to have that grumpy old man as your granddad. But the beautiful thing about it is when I talk to some of my clients, one of the questions I ask them, CEOs, I said, do you have anybody in your business that will call bullshit on you? Because you got to have somebody that'll do that. These guys would do it on each other. They complemented each other so well because they were so opposite in their deal. Eldridge ran the day-to-day operations. Kempner provided them the funds. All right, they wanted to create a system called welfare capitalism, which is a company town. Now, in the back of your mind, think about what you've read about company town, where when you die, you're old, you're sold to the company stove, and then think about what I'm telling you these guys did. They wanted families. There were none at that time. They immediately expanded to 12 months a year processing. They immediately added 10 miles of levee system. And if you check on it, you'll find out that the Sugar Land, I'm not talking about all these outlying levee systems. The Sugar Land levee system is normally ranked the number one or number two levee system in the nation. It's very, and they continued that. So they did that. They wanted to build houses for their employees. They brought a bunch of carpenters in from Schulenburg. In fact, for a while it was called Little Schulenburg. They told them, we want nice houses. We want them on big lots so kids can play and people were close enough to the downtown to shop on Saturday. This was downtown. This area was downtown. There were 3 neighborhoods. The Hill, and we do a walking tour the second Saturday of every month. If you ever get a chance, I would y'all think about it. And the Hill, it's called the Hill because it used to be when you went across the creek, you'd have to step up 2 feet to get to it. The Flats, which is Brooks going down Highway 6 from right outside, and then Mayfield Park, which is right across the bayou. The Hill was primarily hourly folks. Brook Street and the Flats was primarily the management type folks or supervisory folks, and Midfield Park was a minority community. They brought these people in. They were anytime they had a problem, they would report it and the company would take care of it. We've got documents from work orders where, like says at 8:30 on this date, this address reported a plumbing problem. You go down through all the other stuff that put on the posted that day, you get down at 5:30, this date, plumbing problem at this address was fixed. You'd put a note out on your porch every day how much ice and milk you want. They would bring it to you. You were told that your rent would not go up unless you made major changes to it. The first house you see when you cross a little bridge going over the hill, it's right there on the left. When that gentleman moved into it in, I think it was about 1920, he was paying $35 a month. When the Depression hit, they lowered his rent to $30 a month. When he bought the house in 1959 at incorporation, he was still paying $30 a month. Not one employee lost their job during the Depression. Some founders may have had their revenue stream reduced a little bit, but they were ensuring that every single employee had a revenue stream to get them through the bad times. They lost money one time before they both died. And that was the year that they wanted to go into the fig business. And that was also coincided with the year that the fig crop tanked. So they lost money that one year. They provided property. The old time locals called it Holy Corner. It had a Methodist, a Baptist, Presbyterian, and a Catholic church on the opposing corner. They're all still in town, but they've just been relocated. Now, I did not mention that there was a Jewish church or synagogue. The Kempners were a Jewish family. Every year that I can remember from the early 50s, when we were driving from Corpus to Dallas to see my grandparents, before all the stuff built up, you could look on what was then 59, you could look over here and you could see the chart house, big red building with a white cross lit up on three sides. This was a white cross on Christmas of a business owned by a Jewish family. I think that speaks volume for who these people were. Kentner I've always thought he was more spiritual than he was religious. You know, he just wanted, like Mama said, if you're going to do it, by gosh, you better do it right. And every time when they were talking one time about one of the possible uses of the chart house, we were talking with one of the developers, and I said, well, what about, and he said, what about the cross? I said, yeah. He said, we've done research on that, and we know that the people in Sugar Land want those crosses to stay because that's tradition. One year they had a couple years they had a Christmas tree lit up in green, I think. He said they did the research about holograms, and they figured out a way to get around it. So that a way to do it so it wouldn't change anything, but it would still keep that thing that everybody expects to see them, regardless of what your religion is. It's just one of the things you see in Sugar Land over the Christmas holidays. So they built a school in 1918. They sent a guy named M.R. Wood. He was an engineer. They sent him to California to get some good ideas about schools. I think that's kind of an oxymoron. I don't know why anybody wants to send anybody to California, at least nowadays, to get good ideas about anything. That's a personal opinion. That's not the opinion of the foundation. That's Hal J's opinion. He came back with the idea, and I'll show you a picture of the school that was built over where the auditorium is. The auditorium is the oldest surviving building in the city. It had the auditorium in the middle, and it had a portico on each side with 5 classrooms, independent classrooms, no air conditioning, clear story windows. And they brought in teachers. They were mostly widows and single women, built them a teacherage right across the street. Bad idea. After 1 year, the teachers go to the company and they say, look, we love the kids. We got them every day, but we're too close to them on the off hours. So they immediately built another teacherage, and that one is still there as a private home. Built another teacherage across the street in the Belknap area. And you can see it from the highway. It's kind of a Williamsburg blue house. It's now a private residence also, but they did this for them, provide them room and board and lodging at no cost, just to make them happy. The kids had a deal that they called Kodak. And remember the little brown Kodak box cameras that everybody had back in I'm not gonna say when, back in the day. Which is one reason why we had literally thousands of photographs over the years where people have taken these pictures over when they were kids and they turn them over to the museum to be used in the museum. In the early 19-teens, they created an organization called Sugar Land Industries. And if you look out that direction, the green spot, past the green area past the water tower, they had a canning plant where they made everything from vinegar to battery acid. They had a canning plant where they would bring in food from the tenant farmers. They had a bag plant where they would take the bagasse, which is the fiber of the cane. They would pulp it. They would turn it into pulp paper, turn that into bags to ship sugar in. So it's like the Indians. Nothing went to waste of the sugar cane. When you got that bag of sugar, you pretty much had the whole cane in your hand. They owned Sealy Mattress for a period of time over here. There were 3 doctors. Dr. Blackledge, and I've talked to people on the hikes, many of them that had one of these 3 doctors. Dr. Blackledge, Dr. Deathridge, and Dr. Slaughter. I'm thinking I'm going to walk the rail to Houston to find a doctor that doesn't have death in his name, some form of death in his name. But everybody in Sugar Land had one of these 3 guys. They came here with the prison. They were the prison doctors, and then they took over the medical stuff. For all the people. Their offices were right here on Kempner Street. Kempner Street, before these guys took it over, like I said, it was just bars and bordellos. Then it developed, and I'll show you a picture in there where it was beautiful downtown Sugar Land. Everything you could want in Sugar, if you live in Sugar Land, could be bought on Kempner Street out here. They, like I said, they went to 12 months a year of processing cane. They did everything they could to make people want to be here. In 1929, the old Houston Post had a front page article, and it said there is no more beautiful place to live in an idyllic little town 30 miles southwest of Houston. You do not use those kinds of adjectives in describing a company town, but that's who these guys were. And had they not been on that board, we wouldn't be standing. I'm convinced we wouldn't be standing here right now. I call the dynamic duo because they set the groundwork for what we have right now in Sugar Land by taking Mrs. Kempner's admonition to heart, doing it right. Let me see what else I know under them. Well, about 1959, they started worrying about this big monster down the road coming out and annex. So they said, we have to become a city, an incorporated city. And they said, to do that, we have to have a tax base. Well, to do that, we have to have homes for y'all to sell. And to do that, we've got to sell the company homes to the people that are living in it. And like I said, that one guy was paying $5 less than he was when he moved into it in 1959. So they incorporated, and that gets us to one word versus two words. And I was on a hike one day, and I was explaining this. I said, when they incorporated in 1959, some attorney sent the paperwork to Delaware, and it had it as one word. And I might have been a little more expressive when I said that to them. Then I realized that there were two people in the group that were attorneys, but they just laughed. So it is two words. They fixed that. So now every word, it's Sugar Land, not Sugar Land. And they got that done. They got incorporated. They started selling the houses to the employees, and they had some vacant land which they would sell to the employees. Now, one thing that's really cool, and you need to see them to understand what I'm talking about. If you take our hike, go down 2nd Street, which is really the first street, but that's a whole different story where they added dirt and added another street or whatever. About halfway down on the right, coming back this direction, there are 5 houses in a row. They are Sears Roebuck houses. I don't know if you knew that up until about 1948, you could go to the Sears Roebuck catalog and order a house. Everything from a little cottage to a 3-story Victorian mansion, straight out of the catalog. And I've got some catalogs that my grandmother gave me years and years and years ago, and they're in it. And you can Google it, and you'll see houses look very much like these little bungalows that we have over here. I don't know how that happened. They may have been sitting around the boardroom one day and said, I was looking for a submachine gun in the Sears Roebuck catalog, which you could also buy at the same time from Sears Roebuck. And I saw these houses in the catalog. Let's bring a couple of them in and let's just see how they work. So they did. So for whatever reason, they showed that there's 5 houses over there, and they're all basically the same footprint with some modifications. Some porches have been closed, some haven't. But if you drive down 2nd Street back this direction from the school, you'll see these houses. They're right in a row. The other really cool thing about Sugar Land, another real cool thing about Sugar Land, is that there have been 2 Sugar Land Expresses. The second Sugar Land Express was a really, really, really hokey movie starring Goldie Hawn in like 1967 or 72 or something. It's about a prison break from the Ellis unit out, or the Jester unit out here. I mean, really, really hokey. But 2 things about it. It was her first movie, and it was the first movie that Steven Spielberg ever directed. We tried to get him to come back for the 100th anniversary, but he had other plans and couldn't work it into his schedule. But on first Sugar Land Express, who likes football? Okay. Guy named Ken Hall. About 1997, I guess, or 69, something like that. Whenever we built, I was on the school board back then when we built the Hall Stadium down at by Vicksburg. I met the guy. And at that time, he was probably 73, 74 years old. Had body fat of probably 5%. I mean, a solid man. And then we went to they used to have Chautauqua Talks. The auditorium, if you ever get a chance, they have plays almost every Saturday. And it's everything from Shakespeare to kids' plays. And that thing had been restored. It's got all the original Hart Pine floor. All the seating is not the original, but it was made by one or 2 companies in the country that make that exact same thing as they had originally. It's air conditioned now. But he was there one night. My wife and I went to hear him, and he was in the band at Sugarland. And one of his buddies said, we need to go out for football. This is like 1951. We need to go out for football. And he said, no. I play the trumpet in the band. I'm happy as I could be. I don't have any desire to play football. So the first day of practice, this guy goes by and gets him, says, we're going to tryouts. And they get there, and one of the coaches, a guy named Dugan Hightower, who is an old Sugarland family, a phenomenal man. Hightower High School is named after him. His wife, Dot, was one of the most just truly wonderful women I've ever known in my life. There's two of them. She's one of the three. I better keep my wife in there. But they went to practice, and he told the coach, said, I don't want to run the ball. Those guys get hurt. I'll throw it and I'll catch it. So about halfway through his first game, they put him in. He said, I dropped back and I saw the receiver all the way down the field of the end zone. So I heaved the ball to him. He caught it. And I said, this catching the ball may not be such a bad deal and running the ball. So he changed over. When he got out of while he was playing, the Branding Matters is a advertising little place across the street. It used to be an Enco station. I really aged myself then. It used to be an Enco station. When sports writers would come to Sugarland in 51, 52, and 53, they would go to the Enco station, and their only question would be, who is playing Ken tonight? Not who's Sugarland playing, or who's playing, or who's playing Ken tonight. And they would go to the game. When he got out of high school, he owned every single offensive record in the nation. He had close to 14,000 yards offense. He had probably 24 300-yard games. It's just massive statistics. What's really impressive is he never played, very seldom have ever played more than one half of the game. He was that good. When he went to A&M, this was right before the Junction Boy days and Bear Bryant. Bear was there, but it was before the Junction Boy days. Bear wanted him to block, and he didn't want to block. That's not what I do. I run the ball. Quite well, I might add, but I run the ball. And they had some fights, and he ended up leaving after a year or so. And Bear Bryant, in his memoirs, he was a pretty narcissistic guy, as you probably know. He made the comment, I ruined Ken Hall as a football player by trying to make him do something that was not his true strength, which was running. You know who John David Crow was? First Heisman Trophy winner at A&M. He was Hall's backup. And he made the comments before he passed away, I love Bear Bryant with all my heart, but he said, I'm here to tell you, if he had not treated Ken Hall like he did, you would never have heard the name John David Crow. That's how good he was. And a Heisman Trophy winner was saying, his Heisman Trophy winner backup was saying that. Ken has since moved. He's probably in his 90s now. And my wife and I were wrapping up a very, very arduous day of wine tasting in Napa Valley. And I'm standing there with the Sweetwater cap on. And the guy serving the wine says, well, where's Sweetwater? And I said, that's in Sugarland, Texas. He said, you know who the first Sugarland Express was? I said, hell yeah, how do you know? And he said, I was his son's best man. And he lives in Santa Rosa now to be around his grandkids. But, and my guess he's in his phenomenal physical shape as he was the first time I met him. But anyway, fast forward, we're back to today. There are a couple of things, well, in my mind, and I'm not going to cast any dispersions on another town that you're going to be going to at some point in time that you mentioned, or another town that you won't be because it doesn't really, I don't think it would be. When we first moved here, I saw all these orange bricks. I said, yeah, don't you guys have any creativity? And then I'm starting to, over the years, I'm come to the realization that if I'm on 59 heading south, and if I turn right, and I know within a second when I'm out of Sugarland and when I'm in Houston. I like Missouri City. I got a lot of friends live there. If I turn left, I know exactly when I'm out of Sugarland because they're doing it right. They're doing it right. I have no problem with it, the types of zoning that they're doing now because they're maintaining Sugarland the way I like it. I guess that's somewhat selfish, but they got a couple of other things, and this is something you can mention to your prospective folks. They have a deal called Sugarland 101. If you live in Sugarland, there's no charge. It's about 12 weeks at night, one night a week, and a couple of Saturdays. And you meet at City Hall, not City Hall. Normally it's, well, yeah, well, that one is at City Hall. And they bring in all the directors, every department in the city, and you learn about how each department works. You learn from the fire department, the police department, the airport, the public works, everything. And you got a chance to ask questions of the people that do the work. I'm not talking about the council. I'm talking about the people that do the work, which we've come to believe are pretty phenomenal people. Everything you can imagine about the city of Sugar Land. They take you to the water treatment plant, which is very unusual for most, compared to what most cities have. They do everything. They have an airport academy. This airport historically is ranked as a number one or number two regional airport in the nation. We have corporate pilots from across the Mason-Dixon line, bringing all of their executives to Houston for meetings. They lobby their executives to fly into Sugar Land because of the way they're treated. Doesn't cost the taxpayers a penny. Every penny spent to run that airport is paid through fuel sales to the airline and to the airports, and, to the clients. You're not one penny of your tax dollar goes to the airport, and it is a great place. We worked the Super Bowl, and they had something like 400 planes there that weekend. Fun experience. Kind of disappointed. We were told that we were going to drive buggies, golf carts out and pick up these people and take them into and not to get near the planes. Well, as soon as the plane started landing, as soon as one landed and dropped the door, here comes a caravan of Mercedes limos right to, within this close to the door. So we got to watch them pick people up and take them, but we didn't do much, but it was just watching the people and the planes and how well organized it was. They have a police academy. We have not taken that one yet, where you do ride-alongs with the police department. You learn all about the function of the police department, and these, again, they provide food and refreshments, and they bring the people in that are actually doing the work. The coolest one my wife and I have ever done was the fire academy. I'm a woodworker, so I like tools. These men and women have the coolest toys you will ever see in your life. You remember Smokey and the Bandit? Remember the car that Jackie Gleason was driving? When it started, it was a full-blown car. And when it was in it, it was 4 wheels, a steering wheel, and a seat. We got to go out there in full bunker gear and playing with their toys. And when we left, we had a car that started out just like his started out. And when we left, it looked just like his did. There was nothing but a frame. But we got to go in full bunker gear, go into smoking buildings and pull dummies out. Not people that were dumb enough to go in there, but actual dummies. And we had, we did all kinds of cool stuff, but it gives you a chance to really meet some of the people that you're relying on. And my wife and I ended up adopting 2 of the firehouses, and we'll take them stuff every holiday. And I went out to one at Station 7, the one I adopted, and I said, we're going to have a jack-o'-lantern carving contest. And they said, well, who's going to judge? I said, well, first of all, I'm going to come out here and grill ribeye for the winning ship. So who's going to judge? I said, well, it's going to be, at this time, it's going to be my 7-year-old granddaughter and my 9-year-old grandson. And they are tough. So you better be good. You better make a good, but the point is you get to meet these people face to face and talk to them. And that's part of what Sugar Land does right. That's one of the many things that they do right. And we've developed a phenomenal appreciation for these, in particular firefighters. So that's where most of our activity, our interaction is with. But it's just done right. There's a show called It's How You Get There. It's on the Discovery Channel or Travel Channel, or one of those. And I met with the crew on that one, and we did some filming, and my last comment to them was, just like I said when I started here, is that there's no sweeter place to live than Sugar Land, Texas. It's just a great place to live and a great place to raise a family. And they offer so much stuff, for the residents to do just by being residents. And, if you ever need an advocate for somebody that's on the borderline, give me a call, because other than my 2 daughters, there's probably nothing I'd rather brag about than Sugar Land, Texas. Can I answer any questions? The main thing I wanted you, and she mentioned it, what I want you to know was what our history is. You know, this is Texas. This is where it began, pure and simple. I'll tell people, if you want to know how Stephen F. Austin did all the management stuff for the state of Texas, the grants, go to San Felipe. They got a great museum there. If you want to know where it all started, it's where the first colony was and where the new first colony is. Yes, ma'am.
First colony, when was the first colony started here?
The community?
No, the first colony is.
Oh, it was about 1823. That's when he started bringing them out. And he brought them in a couple of groups, and about 40% of them stayed here, and the rest of them went to San Felipe with him. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
And so when I grew up here, it was Sugarland. And then I went to college. I mean, like, then moved back to the area, and now there's sugar plant. So
Well, when they incorporated in '59, that's when those attorneys sent it as one word. It was changed shortly thereafter to Sugar Land, 2 words. Yeah. 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 Yeah, but if you go back and look at documentation from that era after the, maybe a year after the incorporation, you'll start seeing it show up as 2 words. Now, people still say Sugar Land. It still sounds like it's 1 word. And my wife and I have this argument lots of times. I'm sorry, but it's 2 words according to the, yeah.
Any other question? What are we free to do?
Well, I tell you, we can go back in this back room. There are a couple of pictures I want to show you that show you what it was back in the day, and they're at 2 different eras. And we can show you that, and then you can look at the timeline over here, and which follows it, and look at the grumpy old man and the good guy. But Johnston Development provided that for the museum at considerable expense, and we're working on another timeline like that.
So this is how we'll do it. We'll go ahead and end the meeting, right? So if people have to leave, they can go ahead and leave, drop their food and everything else. But I also want to bring our lunch sponsors up first. And then if we want to stop the stream, we can stop the stream. But if you want to keep it, we can keep it and move around as we do that. That way, we're not eating up our time with trying to get to that space and then another space and everything else. Is that okay with you? Okay, so I wanted to bring up our lunch sponsor for today, and you guys probably remember them or you all, I have to start saying guys, you all, right? Probably remember them from Red Day and contributing and getting, well, we didn't get dirty, but getting classy and building some things as well. So I'll let you introduce yourself. This is Keely and what she does, and give her a round of applause, her and her group a round of applause for the work.
I know that is for the display and not for me, but I will still accept it. My name is Keely James. I know I've met a couple of you at Red Day, but for those of you that I've not, I am the Director of Partnerships at Free Model here in Texas. And for those of you that are not familiar with us, Free Model is a pre-sales renovation company. We do everything exclusively through real estate agents. So we will not touch a deal that does not have an agent attached to it. And what we are is a tool that you all can offer your clients. So Free Model will plan, manage, and pay for your sellers, make readies, remodels, renovations, repairs, etc., prior to their home hitting the market. So pre-list so that they can get the most for their home when it does hit the market. And we do everything local. So Danielle Haynes is here with us. She is, I think, a couple miles from your office, but she is one of our project directors. So the way that Free Model operates is we have a single local point of contact from start to finish, which means you can really get to know your project director. You understand how they're going to communicate with your clients, what type of work they're going to deliver, kind of what their communication styles and preferences are, which I think is so huge because you've worked hard for this client or prospect. We will do a little bit of anything and everything as long as we're not moving exterior walls of the home. So as long as we're not adding square footage, fair game. So that's anything from your roof and your foundation or things that buyers come back and haggle with you about after the inspection report. To decluttering, deporting, inherited homes, your standard make-readies. Go into a house, smells like a dog. It needs new carpet, it needs new paint. We'll come in and do all of that. We don't have a minimum or a maximum. We have very simple requirement, and that is that homeowner has enough equity in the home to make sure everybody gets paid at the end of the day. Which I think most of you are nodding your head that you like getting paid your commission, and we like there to be wiggle room. So 1 year deferred payment. We don't charge any interest. We don't charge any time-based fees. So if, just to kind of put that in perspective, if somebody said, I'm going to go out and get a personal loan, or I'm going to put this on a credit card right now, they're paying about 20+% interest just to borrow the money. We will provide the service and let them borrow the money for up to 1 year. Everybody tends to always ask what happens if the home doesn't sell. It usually doesn't happen. Those move-in ready, refresh, updated homes usually move pretty quickly in for top dollar.
But in the case it doesn't, what do you do?
If it didn't, we would work with you and the homeowner. Maybe you have a local lender that you prefer that can do a personal loan, a HELOC, a cash out refi, something of that.
Same process if it doesn't appraise for the amount and it's short for paying everything.
You mean if the after repair doesn't appraise?
Yeah.
We actually do like kind of a back end, a check on that where
So you have your own
Very
underwriting.
we're just doing, what we're looking at is the existing balance on the mortgage plus the cost of the project. We don't want to see that exceed 70% of the after repair value. So typically with that 30%, even if the market shifts a bit, doesn't appraise quite where we thought, it should be fine. Sure.
And then remember, you guys have your own contract that's vetted to your.
We do. So we have a local bench of contractors. We have a team that all they're doing is finding, vetting, and onboarding contractors, but we are an open platform. So, for example, agents typically like to use their own stager. If you say, hey, I want to do the staging in this home, but I want to use my person, happy to use them. We'll get them onboarded as long as they're licensed and insured. And following those parameters, we'll get them brought onto the pre-model program, and then you can do all that deferred payment for your client.
And then they're feeding their way of saying it should start out. Have to find your name.
So we operate as a general contractor, which means we just apply a slight markup in labor's material, just like a standard general contractor would. We just have a little bit different. We have some add-ons because we have interior designers as our project directors. They're managing the project, and we're providing the capital upfront.
You get set payment after closing?
Yes.
Don't-
I don't know the specifics on FHA, but typically what we do is we have a fixed rate bid. So it would be X dollar amount. The homeowner signs that contract. That price doesn't change unless the scope of work changes. So no interest, no time-based fees. And then that is what they sign, what's called a seller's escrow disclosure, which means that then we are paid out of escrow when the home closes. I couldn't tell you the specifics on FHA though. Anybody else? Any other questions? All right, cool.
Well, she will definitely be right there on the side or walking around with us. So if you think of any questions between now and then, you're here to help.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Thank
if you-
you. Yeah, I have some.
Okay, perfect,
Okay.
perfect.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay, well, thank you guys again. Now, we would not be here and, well, we would, but we want to also thank our business partners, our allied business partners for everything that they do for our office as well. They're constantly there supporting you guys. So that's AMCAP, we see Dale and we see Denise in the back and Patent Title. I see Melissa, I'm missing somebody else. Yuyi, is she here? But also Yuyi with Reliant Energy. So make sure y'all spend some time with them as well and get some updates I know this is a little different of a meeting, and so I thank you guys for indulging us for that. But I'm gonna turn it back. So for y'all, if y'all are online and you're leaving, fine, thank you, you're missed out. And for the rest of you guys, if any of you need to leave, there's a bathroom towards the back over there as well, if that's something necessary. But I'm going to, with your permission, turn it back to